I noticed that it was very emotional for a lot of people. And I'm guessing the people that I saw wiping away tears were probably Ruth Ann Chitwood's family, who hearing their mother's voice, grandmother's voice, after she has passed away. And obviously you were very emotional as well. When you came out on that stage and everyone was standing for you, I could not stand, but if I could, I would have been the first one up, by the way. Um, uh, what what does that mean to you? Was it overwhelming? Was it fulfilling? Was it all of those things?
The most overwhelming thing was the spotlight. I couldn't see a single person out in the audience.
Really?
That was, yeah, when you see me looking around, I tried to make it look very professional, but in reality, all I could see was light. And I have horrible astigmatism, so I was completely blinded throughout the whole thing.
Wow.
I couldn't see anyone. So that was the most overwhelming thing. But coming out on stage, it was humbling more than anything.
I mean, to receive the reception that you received.
Yeah, it was humbling because I don't, there are a lot of people who, and I don't know exactly what verbiage to use, but there are a lot of people on YouTube or Patreon who, make historical films, and a lot of times those personalities, they're always in front of the camera. They make it about them, and that was never what I set out to do. I never wanted my work to be about me. In fact, if I wasn't okay with my narration voice, I would even get someone else to narrate it. Like I don't have to be the celebrity, but to get that recognition and to know that people appreciated this piece of art that I did, this baby. I mean, that was incredibly humbling, and it's an experience that I'll always remember.
And I noticed that you were very emotional as well. Obviously, it would be very emotional because a creation like that does become your baby, and you're seeing it up on the big screen. It would have to be very emotional for you. But what in particular was driving your emotion that day?
I would say the story itself, the part of the documentary that tugs at my heartstrings the most is the photos of demolition in Whitfield in the 1970s, and going through the whole sequence where we underscore how many landmarks are gone. And that's really why I incorporated so many photos of landmarks that are gone into the narrative. I wanted to really emphasize, like, hey, this is what all we've lost. If you don't protect what you've got left, you're going to lose that too.
Right.
And when I go through that sequence, after Jean Lester, says the hotel shouldn't have been a bank. Right. She was lovely, by the way. I had a hoot with her. But when we go through that sequence, it really hits home. It's like, these places aren't just buildings. They're the backdrops where our lives unfold. They're the places where we're born. They're the places where we have our first kiss, the places we graduate from school, the places we lose our parents in. I mean, these buildings are more than just bricks and mortar. And Winston Churchill put it really well when he once said that, we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. And that kind of mantra is how I view historic landmarks, especially ones, like in small towns where there's not very many to begin with because the town's not very big. So whenever seeing that sequence on the big screen and, hearing some of the audience kind of like, say, "Aw," here and there. I mean, that was, I realized like, aha, I did it. I conveyed to people what I feel when I see this. And that was probably the most emotional moment for me.
The stories that you got, because I know I shared mine with you before. I know you know the story of my great-grandparents before, and but there were probably countless others that you got when you were seeking stories from the George Wythe Hotel. How did you arrive at choosing the three that you chose to be a part of the documentary?
That's sort of an interesting story. The first person I told about this when I wanted to start the documentary was Farron.
Sure.
And within 15 minutes, she emailed me back and sent me a whole bunch of pamphlets and other historical material and said, "That's great, get started." And, she was an enthusiastic supporter from day one.
Sure.
And as I sent her the first draft of, I think it was after I sent her the first draft of the script, I don't remember, but I know that at one point, she was the one who recommended in-person interviews. That's something I had never done in any of my films before. And so I was kind of nervous about that just because I've never done it, but, I'm not afraid of the challenge. I'll roll up my hands and try anything once. Yeah. So Farron recommended John Johnson, Gene Lester, and Ruth Ann Chitwood. And of course, recommended that if I wanted anyone else, I could pull them in. But I thought, to keep it at a manageable length, 3 voices would probably be enough. And they were from fairly diverse backgrounds. And so I thought they would all mix well together. But when it came time for the interviews, Farron was there for all 3. But she just kind of let me loose. None of it was scripted. It was just like you and me right now. It was just a dialogue, and which is why I think they were all so relaxed. I didn't want it to be structured. I showed up in shorts and a T-shirt, I think between the 3 of them, I got 2.5 hours of interview material. I would have loved to include more in the documentary, and maybe one day. If anything that they ever talked about in any of that material is pertinent to any future documentaries about Litchfield, I've saved all the interviews. I'll include that in there too. But that's sort of how the interviews unfolded in a nutshell.
That's another thing about you and I, how we're connected. Never throw anything away. You never know what you might use. And particularly with Ruth Ann Chitwood, she lived to be 100. She was I didn't know her personally, but she was a legend in this community. Her husband delivered my mother and countless other people in Wythe County, and you got one of the last anything that was recorded from her, maybe the last thing ever that was recorded in her life. So did that resonate with you as well? Certainly, to the point that obviously you'd want to dedicate that to her memory, and she was responsible for the clock coming back to the hotel. But obviously, I'm sure that resonated with you as well.
It did, and it still does. Farron I actually interviewed her in June of last year, so about 2 months ago. And Farron said, we went up to her house. Of course, she was on oxygen, and if you listen closely, you'll hear her oxygen tank in the background. I tried to put that out, but I couldn't do it completely. But she, despite her physical frailty, she was sharp. I think I got 28 minutes of material out of her. And she didn't. She just wanted her voice recorded. We didn't film her. We just did the voice recording. But she was sharp as a tack. She was fun. And, Farron told me that if we had waited about another month to do that, we wouldn't have gotten anything. It wasn't long after that she just started to fade. And I was very humbled to know that, we sort of got, as you said, it's probably the last thing of her that was ever recorded.
Yeah. Ruth Ann and I had the same caregiver, Tina Ratcliffe. She actually passed away before Miss Chitwood did. She was a neighbor and friend of mine and died suddenly of cancer. So when I think of Miss Chitwood, I think of her. But you're absolutely right about that, because I wanted to write that George Wythe novel before my great-grandmother died in 2014, and I didn't get it done. I wanted to do it before the hotel opened, and I didn't get it done. So I'm gonna have to do it at some point. And maybe you were the inspiration I need to get it done. I just don't know. But it's definitely heavy on my heart to do, and if you would like to be a part of it in any way, I'd be honored to have you.
Well, sure. Yeah, in any way I could help, I'd be more than happy to do anything that I can.
Well, I know that you're very, very busy with other projects. What other documentaries are you working to get off the table right now?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm a lot like you, I think, in the sense that, I have a tendency to want to do it all and then overextend myself and then panic. That's kind of like my perpetual state of existence when it comes to documentaries, at least. I've got one that I'm working on, and I've decided to sort of prioritize this, above everything else right now due to the urgency of it. I want to produce another sort of full-length documentary, similar in length and structure to what I did with the Bolling Wilson Hotel. But it's about a church in southern West Virginia in McDowell County. It's the church itself is over 100 years old and is historically significant for a variety of reasons, including its close association with the founder of the U.S. Steel Corporation. And it also happened to be my father's family's ancestral parish. Several generations of my father's family went through catechism there, were baptized there, had funerals there. My parents were married there in the 80s. It's a place I've always had a connection to, and because of the declining population in southern West Virginia that's been going on since the 80s, a lot of churches, including this one, are struggling to keep their doors open. And I was approached recently by a couple members of the congregation there who asked if I would be willing to produce a documentary as a fundraiser and to create visibility for the church, and hoping that will direct, some kind of attention to help keep it going. And, there are people who I can interview who are all about Ruth Ann Chitwood's age, who are in their 90s, whose minds are still sharp. And I've arrived at the conclusion, like, if this is going to get done, it needs to get done like now.
Yeah.
And given the urgency of the church's physical state and all this other stuff, it's like, I feel like this really deep spiritual conviction. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I'm very spiritual, though, and I feel this very strong spiritual conviction that's just gnawing at me, saying, this is what you need to do. And so that's my next big project. I'm hoping that'll be out by next summer. I don't want to keep it on my desk for 2 years like I did the Bolling Wilson.
As in 2024.
Right. Yeah, it is upcoming summer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping for, and we'll see what's going to go. I know I've got some people from the Virginia Wine Board here in Richmond who may be interested in collaborating with me on a documentary that I've already been working on too. Which is about a gentleman who here in Richmond in the early 1800s developed the first grape that could grow here in North America and produce a drinkable wine. And that grape actually later in the 1870s pretty much saved the French wine industry, which was almost totally obliterated from life. It also played a role in the wine industry in California. This one man who is virtually unheard of, his tinkering around in his shed 200 years ago produced this horticultural godsend that saved millions of people's livelihoods and, produced a really nice wine that's really hard to find too. And that all started here in Virginia. And that's one of those stories that's kind of like the Bolling Wilson in the sense that it's a story that's off the radar. You're not going to find anything on Wikipedia about it. You're not going to, certainly find anything on Netflix about it. But it's significant, it's relevant, and it's interesting. And, the Virginia Wine Board may be willing to collaborate with me on that to make that extra special. So we'll see. But those are the two big ones I've got. I've got 3 or 4 others on the back burner, but those are the two big ones I want to try and push out before this coming summer.
Okay, so hopefully you can have more premieres at theaters and things like that.
Well, here's hoping. I mean, this is, like I said, I've only really been making decent quality films for the past year. And so, this is all kind of happening very quickly. It's hard to say exactly where I'm going to be at this time next year with it, but I have entered the Bolling Wilson documentary into the Rural Film Festival at the Lyric Theater in Blacksburg. That's going to come this coming February, and I don't know if they're going to accept it or not, but I submitted it just to see. But yes, the other two films I am going to try and enter into some other film competitions too, just to, just to create visibility for these places and these subjects in Virginia history that deserve more recognition than they get.
Well, fantastic, and congratulations to you. Thank you for all you do for our community. God bless you. You were even willing to entertain helping me on something that I would like to bring to fruition. And I'm very grateful for even you considering something like that. Somewhat of your talent and skill, and it does not, what you do does not go unnoticed. It does not go unappreciated, and I hope you are getting that back from people, because that is what you deserve.
Oh, well, thank you, Zach. I appreciate that, and can easily say the same for you too. 99% of the feedback I've gotten on the Bolling Wilson documentary has been positive feedback. So I'm certainly humbled by that, and
I was just happy to be there and to be a part of it and to see it, and very thrilled for you. I hope you have monumental success, particularly with this one. The Whitfield Depot too is marvelous because it's like 2 blocks from my house. Thomas Jefferson Boyd's house, where he lived, is actually directly across the street from me. Big yellow house on 4th Street. So that one is very near and dear to my heart. And I also learned about passenger trains maybe coming back toward the Whitfield area, and that's something I've always wanted.
Oh, I know. As someone who loves passenger rail travel, I would never drive down 81 again if they took it there. But
you bet it's a death trap.
It is. No, yeah, that's not an exaggeration. It is.
My wife and I went from going up to D.C. in 2018 to see a concert, and it was one of the greatest trips I ever had. I absolutely loved, watching the episode of I Love Lucy. Are you a Lucy fan at all?
A little bit. Not a little bit. I believe her.
All right. Well, there is an episode where Ricky goes to Hollywood to make a film, and they're traveling back from California to New York. They go home on the train, and they ride the Union Pacific, and you can see that they're in actual Union Pacific dining cars. And I think about the trains, the Norfolk and Western trains that stopped in Austinville, where my great-grandmother and my great-aunt that I wrote my first book about was from. And I'm thinking I would give anything for the train to stop in Austinville or the train to stop in Whitfield, because the depot is 2 blocks from my house. And, just to get on the train and ride 5 minutes and get off at Max Meadows or get off at Austinville, I would just be spending summer days just going up and down through the county, just because it's such beautiful scenery through there.
It is. It's beautiful, yeah. And I would love.
Oh yeah, I'd give anything to have it back. So if Amtrak came to Bristol and had a stop in Whitfield, that would be ideal for me. You wouldn't see me much because I'd be on the train traveling as much as I could.
I don't blame you. I would be too.
But anyway, thank you so much for letting me take up so much of your time. I think we're going to get a nice 2-parter out of this.
Oh, lovely. No, it sounds like a plan. It was my pleasure. Just let me know when you got it. I'd love to share it.
Well, I hope you said everything you wanted to say. Is there anything else you want to cover that I didn't let you do?
Oh no, I think we've touched all the bases. I think I've spoken my piece.
Well, I'm very, very proud of the work you've done, and I think you've done a great service to Wytheville. So, thank you for that. And and I hope we can be in touch. Maybe working together on some projects later on.
Absolutely, we'll keep in touch.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and good luck to you in the future. Let us know how the Bolling Wilson film does with the Lyric Theater. If you win, definitely let me know.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to keep you all posted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Take care, Chris.
You too. Talk to you later, Zach.
Bye-bye.
Bye.